Listen up. Listen up. Listen up, you advocates. This is your news segment, and this time around on episode 2, we're giving you all things rundown on the midterm elections. Why were the midterm elections so important? Abobo rights, women's health care, and diversity in candidates. So let's run it down. So what needed to happen in the midterm elections to ensure people have rights to their fucking bodies and rights to abortion? The Democratic Party would need 3 things. 1, House majority. 2, pick up at least 2 Senate seats. And 3, hold on to those swing seats that we already have. So as of November 20th, I'm recording this on November 20th, Democrats have 50 House seats and Republicans have 49. And everyone has been just talking so much about Georgia. So why do people care so much about Georgia right now? And why have you been seeing Georgia scrolling all over your Instagram feed? That's because Georgia went off into a runoff, quotes. And what the hell does a runoff mean? That pretty much means that neither of their top candidates got enough majority votes. Warnick for Democrats, Walker for Republicans. So you have to get a necessary majority number of votes to win. So you could say that Georgia's split right now. The law says that when this happens, it's considered a runoff. So what does this mean? On December 6th, Georgia's final vote will be in, and that will tell us what Senate is going to look like and what the House is going to look like, Democratic or Republican. Number 2 was Senate seats. So that's House majority. This is number 2 for Senate seats. Democrats gained 1 and Republicans lost 1. And there are 2, quote, other parties. So right now we're pretty much breaking even. And that's why, again, the vote from Georgia is so crucial. And that's why everyone's like sucking off Georgia right now. They're obsessed with Georgia right now. Mark your calendars, December 6th, we'll know which party will have the majority. But remember, the results of this is only the beginning of our fight for women's rights and women's health care. So regardless of who wins this election, a Listen Up podcast, I will be tracking any moves from the House and our senators that have to do with the rights to our bodies. Don't worry, we're going to definitely keep you updated. Now, let's get to this badass interview. We have Jenna Caldwell from Time Magazine, and I hope you guys enjoy it. This is Alyssa from Listen Up, and I'm sitting here with the Jenna Caldwell. Jenna is an associate producer for video for Time Magazine. And everyone knows that this podcast is very gay. Very gay, very for the women, very for the underrepresented genders. So are you part of the LGBTQ community? Are you straight? Yes. How do you identify these days? Because we fluid, they can change. It could change tomorrow.
Yeah.
But
it's funny. I am straight.
Why'd you say it like that?
Because it's so funny. When I was a kid, when I was younger, and I've never met anyone else that ever said this. I desperately wanted to be a lesbian woman. And I remember being it was 2 things I really wanted to be when I was young. I wanted to be gay and I wanted to be 5'8". And I just wasn't those things. But
wow.
But yeah, I'm straight, and I wasn't favored. So.
No, we actually the amazing host for our Airbnb right now just said a similar thing. Not that she wanted to be lesbian, but it was she grew up with so many LGBTQ women, and so in middle school they'd be she'd pretty much helping them come out.
Yeah.
And then all of her gay friends are looking at her okay, yes. Your turn. Your turn, come on now.
Yes.
And she's unfortunately, I think I'm straight.
Yeah. It's funny. I told my mom one time when I was 14, I told her I was pansexual. And then she was like, what?
Dude, you are so progressive.
Yeah. And
me at 14 had no idea what the fuck that was.
Yeah. It's funny because I got caught masturbating. And I made it to this whole melodrama. Actually, I didn't get caught. I exposed myself, but that's a different thing.
No, don't skip over that shit.
So
Let's go. Come on.
it's so embarrassing. So
I was a horny ass, over sexualized little kid. Okay, I was the
Yeah.
one like humping my stuffed animals at 4 years old.
You like literally.
This is spicy.
I remember. Oh my god, it was so funny. This is so embarrassing. So when I was like maybe like 13.
Okay, that's a normal age. Normal
yeah,
age.
like 8th grade maybe. I don't remember
Normal
how old
age
I was.
to start flicking around.
Yeah, sometime in middle school. I remember one time my mom, for some reason I didn't have school, and my mom had work, so she went to work, and then I remember she had like this like.
And you were like, "Oh, let's fucking go."
Yes. So I was like sneaking around her room, and she had this small like vibrator thing. So I was like, oh, that was like fun time. So I was like in the living room and I was using it, and then I hear her car pull up, and I look out the window, and she's back, and then I'm like, I was like, okay, maybe she's just left something, right? So I like stuff it into the middle of the couch. I wasn't gonna put it back in her hiding place. Like, there's no way.
You weren't gonna make it.
I wasn't gonna make it.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
You would have gotten more trouble being in her room.
Yeah, right. I was like, I
yeah.
gotta make myself look presentable. Not like all sweaty and gross as I'm sure it was.
And like your hands smell like pussy.
Yeah, sorry.
Like I hope she does not want to like kiss
the
my
window.
hand today.
Yes. It's such a vivid memory too. I remember like Glee was on. It was so vivid. So she came back and then she just like sat down like on the couch, and then she was like, "Oh, I'm not going to work today." And I was like, "What?" And then she's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna go." And our house, the way our house is built, it was like very open, so there was no way. Well, first off, she was sitting on the couch. There was no way I was gonna get this vibrator out of the couch.
How big are we really talking? Like 3 inches?
It was so little.
Like those little tiny silver bullets. That,
yeah,
like, every single mom.
It was literally that. It was literally that. Yeah, and I was like, "There's no way I was gonna get this out of the couch, go into her room, and then like put this in there." It was like no way. And then it was only the two of us living together at the time.
You and your mom.
Yeah, and because if I were to get up, she'd be like, "Oh, where are you going?"
Right.
So she would
like, "Are we hanging out today?" Like I took off this day because I knew you were home.
Yeah, and you can see her room from the living room. So if she watched me walk into her room, it's gonna be very weird.
Yes.
So I think I was just overwhelmed, and I'm a Cancer, so I'm like so emotional and crazy. So I just like got up and I was like, "I'm sorry," and then I was like masturbating and I was using your thing, and then she was like, she was like, "What?"
She was like, "Hold up,
yes." She was like,
told me that you used my fucking vibrator. Yes. And I didn't even know that my daughter even masturbated.
Yes. And then I was like spilling all this, and I guess because I had
thank God this room is like sound.
Yes. And then I know she was looking at me like, "This kid's crazy." And then I think at the time I had wanted to be gay so bad, I just wasn't. I didn't know. But then I was like, "Oh, look, I'm pansexual and all these things." And she was like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh, so you just floodgates opened.
Yeah, I was like, "I'm gonna come up with all of it." And then I started like bawling, crying because Cancer. And then she was like laughing. Like my mom was very chill, so she just started laughing. She was like, "It's fine." She's like, "It's all fine." I was like, "She's like, just go clean up." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks, bye."
Like, go wash your hands.
Yes.
But that's it. That's fine.
But this is a very long-winded way to say I'm straight.
To say, like, I used to masturbate and tried so hard to think about women, and dick images would slip in. I was like, damn it, I'm straight.
We tried.
And I'm just really glad that she didn't instill shame in that moment.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm trying to tell people, like, yo, you do not have to assign shame because I already did. Kids are going to naturally already be shameful. You do not have to add pressure, bro.
You do not at all.
Like, I'm gonna like go cry in my room about this already because I have like a natural tendency to do that when I know that like I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. And if I feel like if our parents were to like inflict shame, I feel like you said, that you carry that forever, you know?
Forever. That could have been like the reason that you like were celibate of masturbation, like anti-masturbation for like
literally like shivers when you see a dildo. Like, I don't know.
Right? Okay. So Jenna is also an author and just came out with a book called Still Waters.
Yeah.
And Still Waters is a really empowering book. How do you choose this as your debut novel? Like, you're a journalist, you've written articles, you interview celebrities, you're around so much access to information. So like, how do you decide, yes, this is the topic for my first ever novel and this is what I have to do?
Yeah, it actually came out of a project I had to do at work. And so in the summer of 2020, obviously it was like, the height of Black Lives Matter and protests and, everyone really, figuring things out for the first time. Um, so I was given an assignment around September of 2020, and I had to interview the mothers of the movement. And that is a group of moms who've lost their children to police violence. So it includes like Trayvon Martin's
Wow.
mom and all these moms.
Yeah.
So I was like doing research, and then basically I just kept coming across this like similar headline, and it was like Trayvon Martin would have been 25 today, or Tamir Rice would have turned 18 today. And I just kept
Yes,
thinking, yeah,
those posts always broke my heart.
yeah. And I just kept thinking, I'm like, I wonder what their lives would have turned out to be. Like, I wonder what they would be doing right now in this moment. And that just brought me back to George Stinney Jr., who, if anyone doesn't know, is the youngest American to ever be executed in the United States, for a crime that was later overturned 70 years too late. So I 70
or
years.
70.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was executed in 1944, and his conviction was overturned in 2014. Um, and again, if you're not familiar with the story, he was accused of killing two little white girls in South Carolina
As a 14-year-old.
as a 14-year-old. And
Do you know how old these girls were? Like, I mean, he's only
yeah,
14.
yeah. One was
Like,
11 and one was 8, if I'm not mistaken.
11 is not a huge age difference. Like, they
Yeah.
would have similar stature. I
Yeah,
feel
and
like
that was a big argument. Like, there was no way he could have killed them, and there's a theory that the bodies were also transported. There was no way he was going to transport these bodies.
right. And then at the time, like, what kind of access to transportation did he even have?
Yeah, right. And like so basically he was accused as the murderer because he was sitting on the railroad tracks with his younger sister, and they just took the cow out to graze, and the two little girls came by, asked if they knew where a specific kind of flower was that they can find. George and sister told them, we don't know where you can find this flower. And then that was it.
Like, weird question, little white girls.
Yeah. And then that was that was the end of their conversation. And then the two
Wow.
girls turned out to be missing. And I think George is one of the people to kind of say, hey, I actually saw those girls earlier. And immediately they were like, you, black kid, saw them? Like, you're the last person to see them. So he was really just railroaded really fast. And in a span of 83 days, he was arrested, tried, convicted, and murdered and executed.
83 days.
Yeah, which is insane.
Imagine your entire life getting taken away from you because some little girls wanted to ask you about flowers, and then 3 months later, like barely even 3 months, not even 3 months later, you're no longer on the planet.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane. And so I just kept thinking about him because it was so long ago, and I was like, I wonder not only what his life would have turned out to be, but his children's lives and their lives and so on and so forth. So it just like I don't know, it just really sparked that idea, and then I just felt the need to write it, so it went from
And
there.
it birthed George.
Yes.
So George is fictional. He is fictional.
In my book, yeah.
But obviously he is.
It stems from the real George. And in this book, I try to reimagine a future for him. So one where he has a life that he never had the opportunity to have.
Yes, exactly. And I want to read a little overview for you guys because the way that I always wonder with books.
Yeah.
do you get to write the overview, or do you have other people write overviews? I always wondered when it comes to that, like, because when you Google something, like, are those your words?
Yeah, I actually wrote the overview.
Okay, cool.
And I did this thing called hybrid publishing, which I think a lot of people should look into.
Yeah.
Because when you do traditional publishing, you end up only taking like, I don't know, like 10% of the royalties, like something very small of the actual royalties from your own book. Yeah.
Okay.
The publisher takes it all.
Right.
And you don't get a say in your cover. You don't get a say in a lot of things. And even like a release date. But when you do hybrid publishing, I own 100% of the royalties. And I own the book 100%.
As you fucking should.
Yes.
Yes, queen.
Sounds like Hulu movie next.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, no one's gonna take my credit. But so with hybrid publishing, so I have a lot more like autonomy, and I get to do all these like small things I think traditional authors don't have the opportunity to do.
But it says, little excerpt from the overview, as he struggles to let go, he being George, as he struggles to let go of what was and hold on to what is, and more importantly, what can be traumas, past and present, dare to carry George back to a world he desperately wants to escape. Rooted in a dark and important history, Still Waters is an emotionally gripping story of love and loss that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end.
A little drama, yes.
And a little drama. So would you say that you're an advocate?
You know what? Previously, no. I would have never said I was an advocate for like prison reform or like death row reform or anything of that. But I think having done this research, it's definitely something I'm definitely interested in using my platform for, and definitely educating as many people as I can.
Yes.
And then once I get my first royalties check, I'm hoping to donate a significant portion of it to like the Innocence Project, because it's so many people like George, and a lot of people think these stories are really far away and really removed, but there's still innocent people sitting on death row.
Currently,
yeah,
no, a
so
lot, and they act like we haven't fixed the prison system. So, like,
yeah,
as we're sitting here talking about the past,
mhm,
y'all really think it's not happening in the present? Come
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Like, yes, we have better access to technology, but who's owning that technology? Like, we haven't
yes,
fixed the system for all these things. Like, 10 years from now, we're going to hear about people today who
yeah,
are sitting in jail today for things that they have not done.
yeah, and that's why I appreciate people who go out their way to like, colorize photos and kind of say like, oh, Martin Luther King's granddaughter's only 5.
Yes!
Yeah, because people think this is something
So far
so far.
away.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is very current, like very living memory.
Yeah, like our grandparents,
Yeah,
like our parents. Are you kidding
yeah.
me? Like, it's not that like they just woke up a day and they're like, yeah, we're kind of over.
Yes, yes,
we're over racism, so it's cool now.
yes. And I think the other thing too is that a lot of people, I think, you know, well, I guess people of different races, but a lot of people think like if it was them living during segregation, they would have acted a particular way. They wouldn't have been biased towards Black people or people of color. But I'm like, a lot of that is still going on today, and you're not doing anything. Like, I think you would have acted very segregationist during that period.
Exactly, because how many people are sitting in a room talking about this or creating an entire platform,
Yes,
giving voice to these people, and then using their royalties and donate to Innocence Project to make sure that this doesn't
yes,
continue to happen? Like, how many people
yes,
are really doing that?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people just put a lot of blame on like, oh, I wasn't alive at that time, and kind of move on from that. And I'm like, well, you're alive now, and there's a lot of work to be done. So
there is a lot of work to be done. Y'all
yeah.
hear this? Y'all hear this right now? There's a lot of work to be done. So get off your ass and listen up. Advocates, I would say that you don't have to pick. I
Mhm.
feel like, in my opinion, like, you don't have to pick what you're an advocate about. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, because honestly, I would say, like, I'm just an advocate in general.
Yeah.
Like, in general,
Mhm.
if there's like, even in social situations, like if
Mhm.
there's someone like in the back of the room, like not really talking, like
Mm.
I'm gonna be like, hey, what's good? Like,
Yeah.
you good? Hey, like
Yeah.
I want to be inclusive. I want everyone to have a voice in the room.
Yeah. I'm so happy you said that too, because I think a lot of the times when we think of like advocates or activists, like we think it has to be one particular thing. Like, and
Yeah.
I guess because we're also living in like a social media era where everyone has to brand themselves, like
Yes.
climate activist or like prison reform activist. Like, but you're totally right. You can just be a general advocate for people and for movements without saying I'm only attached to one thing.
Well, listen up, you advocates. What about the positives from the election? Here's some awesome things in a segment that I like to call About Fucking Time, America.
Let's talk about it.
Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire elected the first openly LGBTQ plus community members. About fucking time, America. Massachusetts elected Governor Maura Healey as the first woman to win. First woman, okay, ever, 2022. And the first openly lesbian woman. So that's a double right there. Vermont elected Becca Balint, sorry, as their only seat in the House of Congress. She's now the first woman and first LGBTQ member to be elected for Vermont. About fucking time, America. New Hampshire, James Rosner became the first openly trans man, who is bisexual, by the way, to win the election to a state legislation in U.S. history. That's U.S. history. About fucking time, America. Andrea Campbell became Attorney General-elect and will be the first Black woman in 2022 to hold any statewide office in Massachusetts. About fucking time, America. Wes Moore has been elected the first Black governor of Maryland. About fucking time, America. Robert Garcia, being the first openly LGBTQ plus immigrant, was elected to Congress in California. About fucking time, America. Maxwell Frost is the first Generation Z elected to Congress in Florida. Florida! About fucking time, Florida! Really, like, categorize you as an advocate. Like,
Yeah.
you, I mean, like, I don't know how anyone couldn't. I used to call myself,
Mm-hmm.
me and some friends I used to hang out with in, like, high school, early college, we used to call ourselves drunk advocates all the time because, honestly, I've made TikToks about this, but, like, honestly, like, you get me a couple shots and you get me in a bar and someone mentioned something like woman oppression, or someone makes like a little comment that like was just a little off-putting, a little bit of alcohol, I am an advocate.
Yes.
Like, I will stand on that bar and I'd be like, excuse me?
Yes.
Like, I'm pressing every single person that's like trying to be oppressive in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with
They're
you.
like, oh, you don't have kids yet? And I was like, what?
Run that back.
Who are you talking to? And they're like, do you know her? Like, I don't even know her.
Yeah.
And then, like, sometimes even the people I'm like advocating for, like, bitch, I don't. I'm cool. I'm cool. Actually.
Yes, that's so important. That's so important. Yeah, I don't know. I think we live sometimes. I think especially it depends where you're from as well. Like I think New Yorkers, for instance, or people. I guess New York. So I won't put in the whole Northeast, but I think New York is
the whole Northeast region.
I was like, at least where I'm from, New Jersey, and I'll say New York. It's a big like mind your business attitude, but I think it's very important not to do that. I think it's very important to stand up for people and really intervene.
It's a fine line though, because honestly, I'm not gonna lie, like that drunk advocacy that I have that flicks on, it's gotten me into some physical altercations, bro. Like I got decked in the face because I was like, guys, out there, like these two people trying to fight, and it was like very racial, and I was like, guys, I just think that there's another way, and they were just like,
oh yes, oh my
I literally
God.
was like, why do I think? And like back then, I was probably like 30 pounds lighter, and I'm like between these two men, and I'm like, guys, we can block, and there's just me, and I'm like, wow, okay,
I know, but it doesn't go without trying, like,
right?
You tried.
Exactly. Like I wasn't even telling me I'm walking away, and I'm proud.
Yeah,
like I'm like, you know what? I got punched in the face.
Yeah,
for trying to keep the peace.
Because also, what's the alternative? I want to watch this one guy pummel the other guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All because like one's Puerto Rican and one's Cuban, and like they don't know how to get along about it. When like, come on, we were all colonized.
Yeah, legit. I know. I hate when like POC goes against POC. I'm like, we're in the
like, come on, bro, come on. Like, don't do that to us right now. What I really like about your book is a line right here. And I know that we've already touched about this, but really, honestly, when I read this, it was just like, I get it. You're a black boy, George, a black man in the eyes of most. But if this country has taught us anything, it's that it hates black boys for what they can become. And I'm gonna just leave y'all with that right there, because that really just sums up the message.
Yeah.
I really think it just sums up the message. And what I wonder is like,
let's talk about it.
We do see POC go against POC.
Yeah.
We do see that. And it's disheartening.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's this weird competition of like who gets the equality priority first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do you ever?
I 100% feel like that. And it's kind of sad because I think it's always like black people particularly like trying to be pushed to the bottom of the barrel. They're like, well, at least I'm not black, or at least blah blah blah. I'm thinking about specifically, I think in LA there's a lot of like political drama happening. Like some like politicians were secretly recorded, 3 Latin politicians, and they were like making fun of black people and all these things, and I was like, not as someone also, you know, being oppressed actively. Yeah. And I'm like jumping to want to be on the white supremacy side for no reason, you know?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, so definitely. And so my whole thing is like, we have yet to finish one journey,
Mhm.
you know what I mean, with a group.
Yeah.
And I think in our minds, we're trying to silo these journeys,
Yeah.
and they're not siloed.
Yeah.
We have yet, like, when women got the right to vote,
Mhm.
like, that wasn't that long ago, you guys. And,
Yeah.
like, how do we as allies, like, how do we, especially as minority
Mhm.
women, support our Black men and, like,
Yeah.
support those other racial injustices,
Mhm.
LGBTQ injustices, like,
Yeah.
how do we make it a team effort? Like, because if
Mhm.
I always say, like, none of us are equal until
Yeah.
all of us are equal.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that is also like intersectionality, you know? I
Ooh,
remember,
give me more.
yes. I remember a couple of years ago, you know, I'm sure a lot of people still say this, like out of ignorance, but they'll say something like, actually, I saw someone do an interview recently, but I didn't listen to it because I already saw the headline and he was gonna be ignorant. But it was like a straight Black man interviewing a gay Black man, and he was like, okay, but are you Black first or gay first? And then it's like that's not a real
That's
question.
not a thing.
Yeah, and I
That's
think
what? That honestly,
yeah,
you know what?
yes,
Thumbs down. Thumbs
yeah,
down for that.
yeah, and I think people think you have to choose between your identities and be like, I'm going to fight for gay liberation and LGBT rights, or I'm going to fight for Black Lives Matter, and you know, and I'm like, you don't have to separate these things. You can actively, like you said earlier, like be an advocate and fight for multiple issues, especially
Right.
in things you don't even belong to. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, like I am up and down. Like my best friend, is from Pakistan, and like literally all day, like I anything anytime anything comes to my timeline about like brown women, like I'm all for it. Like I grew up like, also in the Latino community. Anything that deals with like people from Latinx community, I'm all for it. Like you want me to show up somewhere, I'm showing up. Like I don't think you have to silo and say, oh, I have this connection to this, so I'm not gonna support that. You know?
Right.
So
I want you to never, ever, ever say you're not an advocate.
yeah.
Like, you're
Yeah.
explaining, like, all these things that you'd be up to, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"You're doing the damn thing.
Yeah.
You're doing the damn things." But it's hard to, like, think you're making progress and doing the right things.
Yeah, it is hard. And I think, well, for me personally, I think that's where journalism helps a lot. When sometimes I can see when something has an impact. This is such a small example, but I remember a couple years ago. Obviously, it's really hard to be like the only, or maybe not only, but one of few Black people in a white corporate office. Um,
Ain't gotta tell me.
yeah. And it's hard because you're trying to explain things like in your culture that are so big and so huge phenomenons, and you're telling someone, they're like, what? And it's like, it's so hard to like connect those things in my mind. I'm like, what's a good example? I'll just make up an example, but
That's fine.
I'll say something like, oh my God, City Girls broke this huge record. Like, we have to interview them. We have to figure out like what's next and blah, blah, blah. And they'll be like, who? What? And they were like, were they nominated for a Grammy? And I'm like, why does that matter? Like, I feel like when it comes to POC stories,
Yes.
sometimes they want you to like have layers of like success and you have to prove yourself beyond what other
Beyond.
people have to do.
No, exactly, and, like, that
Hmm.
totally comes into play as a woman in the
Yeah.
corporate world, especially a minority woman.
Yes.
Like, we were just talking about this, like, at work. Like,
Hmm.
I'm launching, I work in human
Yeah.
resources, my 9 to 5, but, I am launching, like, a woman
Hmm.
affinity group, essentially,
Yeah.
and for, like, thousands of people,
Hmm.
and people still are saying, like, "I wish I was considered for hiring equally as men."
Yeah.
And these are women who are directors of
Hmm.
operations, director of blah, 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 like talking
Yeah.
about how they still, to this day,
Hmm.
know and can see and can feel that when they come into the room, they
Hmm.
have to have X, Y, Z dots and T's and everything
Yes.
crossed off
Yes.
just for like the average dude.
Exactly. And I was talking to someone the other day. I remember a few months ago I had asked for a raise. And then literally the question was like, I got back.
Yes, baby girl.
Literally the question I got back was why? And then I said, why what?
I mean, valid question.
Yeah,
I
like well, like
guess.
I gave my XYZ like all the accomplishments I
Oh,
did. Yeah.
so
And then
you approached with the XYZ and then
yeah,
they still asked why?
like why I needed more money. And then I was like, so I can
I live in New York,
yeah, I was like, so I could get a proper apartment.
so I can like, I
Live.
don't know, have an asset.
I was like, slash,
invest.
I can get off of LinkedIn.
Generational wealth, Black
yes,
excellence.
any of those things. And it's so hard too because like a coworker of mine, they are a lower position than me, but pretty much makes the same amount of money as me. And
Sorry.
and not to be like, oh, I have an Ivy League degree or any of those things, but I was like, I have a Ivy League master's degree and I wrote a whole book while working here. Like I have a lot of things, you know, to
like
have
I'm building things that will only further build the company.
Yeah. And I was like, my contribution is crazy. And then for this, you know, other person that doesn't have any of those things, it's
Is
very
this other
stark.
person a man?
Yes. So yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Surprise, surprise.
So it's very
We're
hard.
Not surprise.
Yes. It's very hard for women of color in the workplace because I don't know. I think sometimes they just, well, I'm gonna say they, but people in positions of power, especially white people in positions of power, sometimes really can't wrap their head around why I'm asking for these really basic things.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a quote that I keep like right in front of my desk. So like when you're walking, if you want to walk and talk to me at work, like you have to read this before you come talk to me. And it says, I'm gonna probably butcher it, but it's a summary.
Yeah.
But it says, people are not intentionally bad. What they do is they help people. But when you're only helping people who look like you, that has negative impacts.
Yes.
Thank you for helping, but help others.
Yes.
That's what it is. Like, no one's like, listen, like, we're happy that dude's making money. Like, the person below you, like, yes, do your thing. I'm happy that you got that, but did you have to advocate as hard as I have to advocate?
Yes.
And why was it so easy for that person to see it?
Yeah.
Because they have we all have biases. Yeah. And so like to sit there and act like you don't is silly. And every time someone in power makes a decision, they just we need to pause. All of us have to pause and think like, because I've hired and fired hundreds of people at this point. Yeah. And so I have to pause myself like, am I being biased? Are the reasons for hiring or the reasons for firing anything outside of what's on this proof of paper? Yeah. Because, like, I mean, you got to have tons of proof to be firing people these days. But, like, is there any bias? Like, just take 5 seconds, like, and just literally ask yourself in your head, am I being biased? Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I went to college with a girl, and she had a great quote once. She was saying, it's not the thought that matters. Like when you're being biased, you're like, oh, I might cross the street because the certain group is there. Or like this guy gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
So like,
yes. She was like, it's not the thought that matters, but it's the absence of a second thought to be like, oh, wow, that was a really terrible thought. Wow. I was like, she said that in like passing. That stuck with me years later. And I was like, you're so right.
It's not the thought. It's the absence of the second thought.
Yeah. You constantly have to check yourself. Like you constantly have to check yourself in your biases.
And that might be merch. That might be a merch.
I'm about to hit her up. Oh my god. Oh my god. Listen, I remember one time I had wrote an essay, and I don't know, when you're from like an inner city community and just like young and black, like my father, he went to prison until I think I was about like 9 going on 10. The first 10 years of my life.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. But to me that's such, I don't know.
That was chill.
Yeah, it was a very regular thing. Like I think my dad was in prison. One of my cousins, uncles, dads was in prison.
Like all our homies, you know.
Yeah, I remember one time in high school we even like, because it was just so normal. We were all like, oh, like whose dad's been in prison? And it was like 5 out of like however many of us it was, like 5 out of 7 of us. And everyone was like, oh yeah. Like it was very normal. And then I remember in college I had to write a creative essay. So I wrote a story about just visiting my dad in prison one time when I was like 5 or something like that. And my teacher, I had to do like office hours with her and she can grade it. Yeah. She literally, I've never been so embarrassed in my life. She like, I wish I had something here. She was like, oh, can I grab your Gatorade? Yeah. She was like, it was just so touching. It was like literally trying to take the water off. And she's like, it's just, I was like, oh no.
For anyone who isn't gonna watch this episode and is only listening, she just grabbed my Gatorade and literally was like shaking it as if like she was an alcoholic who like didn't get their fix for a day. Like,
yes, I was in such shock. I was like, are you like, to the point I had to ask her, was she okay? Because I was like, oh my god. It's just so surprising. So surprising when you get to college and meet different
And
people.
not gonna lie, like that's kind of a pet peeve of mine when
Mhm.
when you're empathizing,
Mhm.
like you kind of gotta keep your emotions under control because you don't leave
Yeah.
space for the person you're trying to console to react.
Yeah, and you gotta read the room. Like, if you don't see
Yeah.
me being like Eeyore, like, oh, poor me. Like, you shouldn't have
Yeah.
that reaction. I was
It should
like,
more
yeah.
so it should really be a conversation of like, I am so glad that you persevered through that. Like,
Yeah.
that's really what you should have heard. Like,
Like, thanks for telling
you
your
didn't
story.
deserve that. And I'm sure that must have been difficult. And I'm so happy you're able to articulate it in this beautiful essay. Like, and leave me
Yes.
with something empowering. Don't just be like, oh, Jen, are you
Yes.
okay? Oh, baby.
I was like, oh my God. I that was one top 5 crazy moments. I was like, what is happening?
One more thing that I want to shout out with these midterm elections is the young voters. So, young voters are anyone ages 18 to 29. So, that includes me. And we had a turnout of 30%, which seems low, but in history, it has only been about in the 20s, even in the teens during Trump's election. So, you showed up. About fucking time, America. If you didn't vote, I highly encourage you to vote next time around. And if you don't give a fuck to vote, make sure you're making a community impact in your local community if you're going to take that stance. So that's a rundown of the midterm election. So about fucking time, America. And make sure you check out the update from Georgia on December 6th. But don't worry, a Listen Up podcast has your back.
I was saying to myself, it's just like such a very random thought I had, but how there's varying success in Black communities, and we kind of, I'm not going to say it in an eloquent way at all. I'm just like, you know,
No, this is not for eloquentness.
Yes.
This is for straight up blunt, like just say how it is.
Yes, like obviously in a lot of rap videos, there's no like, more often than not, there's no dark skinned Black women, and if or
100,000,000%.
yeah, or it's very racially ambiguous women, like tan woman, insert whatever race.
Right.
And I feel like, you know, when Black women find success inside of hip hop or other, you know, routes, creative routes like that, like Black women kind of get the short stick. Like they're not really brought up with them.
Yes.
But on the flip side, professionally, I think a lot of times too, Black men aren't giving professional opportunities. There's a lot of times they don't, a lot of scholarships are just exclusively for Black women, or a lot of programs are for Black women, and a lot of things aren't for Black men either. So there's a lot of gatekeeping on and different sides, of like around Black involvement.
No, 1,000,000%. Because
Yeah.
I mean, even when like I even sometimes get uncomfortable. Like
Mhm.
even when I was telling you I went to that comedy club last
Oh,
night
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and how I saw I was the only Black person.
Mhm.
And like even when I say that,
Mhm.
like luckily I've
Mhm.
lived in Atlanta and have really been empowered to own my Black
Mhm.
identity
Yeah.
in the past few years.
Mhm.
So like I'm a Black, Mexican, white, dash of Native
Yeah.
American,
Mhm.
gay woman, and
Mhm.
like that's just who I am, and I
Yeah.
own that now. But I still get a little insecure
Mhm.
talking to darker skinned Black
Oh,
women
yeah.
and being
Mhm.
like, oh, I was the only Black person in the room. Or
Yeah.
I was the only Black blah blah blah. Like I was the only Black representation because I
Yeah.
just sometimes get a little insecure, like, am I Black enough?
Yeah, and I totally get it, because I think for some
Like,
reason we have to, I think, and it's really just evolves out of like white supremacy, but they like,
oh, 1,000,000%.
yeah,
Well, I
we,
mean, because I understand that
yeah.
I 50 years ago would have
Mhm.
had so much more privilege than you would have. And
Yeah,
I like,
yeah.
and in a lot of cases, like I am going to have more privilege than you. And
Mhm.
that's just the fucking bullshit
Yeah,
reality.
I know, and then and it evolves to today where we're like, well, she's not really Black, or even last night with Nicki Minaj, and I don't want to beat this, but Nicki, when Nicki Minaj and Lotto were arguing or going back and forth on Twitter, I thought it was really inappropriate that Nicki Minaj kept referring to Lotto as a Karen because she's half white, and really just like denying her of her Blackness.
Yes.
And it's a really like poor way of weaponizing race.
People would tell me that all the time.
Mhm.
Like my Mexican family, I'm the Black one. With
Mhm.
my Black family, I'm the Mexican one. And
Yeah.
with my white family, I'm just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like not white. Just
Yeah.
not white. Like
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people don't understand. It's like when it comes to African American identity, like I think, I forgot the exact stat, but the average African American, for instance, has at least 15% white ancestry. Like I know for me, I did my ancestry, like I'm 15% white, and there's no like you're gonna be 100% Black, and you came straight from Africa. Like we all are a little bit mixed, and I think
like Nikki is light skin
yeah,
as fuck.
If
like,
she's an ancestry test, it's coming very close to Lotto's.
They be lighting up they lighten up her photos. Do not act like they don't.
Yeah, and then the thing too,
because when it's always with those artists when they first come out, their photos are way darker skin.
Yeah,
and then when they start to get more and more popular,
yeah,
you literally I saw a post of just like shades of shades of Black people as they become famous. The more famous they get, the lighter they are. Yeah, and I don't know if that's fucking Photoshop or because you can't just. It's not a tan.
Yeah.
It's not a tan.
And it's problematic with Nicki in particular, because I remember when Chun-Li came out, and then she was like going so hard with, well, actually, I have a lot of Asian ancestry. But I was like, okay, well, you have a lot of Asian ancestry, but now Lotto is a Karen and like a slur because she has white ancestry. Like, what? Where do we draw the line? You know, like people like to compartmentalize race so much. And I'm like, they don't understand race is evolving. As more generations come on, like, it's evolving. We have to evolve with it. So.
Because we can't be equal until we're all equal.
Yeah. Yes. We have to evolve. Yeah.
So I saw your video from your release party. I'm like, that was the most beautiful space, and you looked gorgeous.
Thank you.
Holy shit. I literally was like, the couches and the little menus and the lights. Like, I'm so sad that I wasn't there. So you had the release party. Still Waters is live. You can get it on Kindle. You can have it on Amazon. You can order a paperback, hardcover too. Also,
it's in it's in Walmart and Barnes and Noble. It should be in Target, but I don't know.
Dude,
they're playing around. I keep checking the website. I'm like, hello.
That is huge.
But it's gonna be there hopefully later this month. But yeah, any big place that sells books, you could order online.
Yes. So, yeah. Okay. So what is next for Still Waters? Is there any kind of teaser or something coming up that maybe our listeners would want to know about?
I'm definitely not done with it. When I wrote this book, I had a lot of anxiety because for a long time, I didn't have the opportunity or the chance to connect with George's living family. And it was really hard because his siblings are like now, I think in their 80s, 90s. Wow. So I kept trying to look people up, and I was getting like obituaries and like just really dead ends. Like I just couldn't find anyone. Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God, like what if this comes out and they hate it? And no. Like it was just so much anxiety. I was like, could not sleep.
Because you were trying to do the respectful thing of like, hey, I'm writing about your brother, son, nephew, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then I was like, oh God, I don't want it to be like, I think there was a lot of drama in the book. I mean, the movie Green Book came out, like, you know, I didn't want to be a Green Book. So yes. Eventually it was so kismet, like so much destiny. I found his niece. Her name's Norma. Because she was.
Hey Norma.
Yes.
That's such a cute name.
I know someone had spoke to her for like a super super niche like blog. So I found her name and I found her on Facebook. And then my uncle was friends with her on Facebook. And I was like, oh.
They go way back.
Yeah. I was like, Uncle Damien. I was like, why are you friends with this lady?
Honestly, we're just feeding that stereotype that Black people know all Black people.
I know. Everyone knows everyone.
If you're Black, we know you.
Yes. And he was like, oh, this is my teacher. And then I was like, oh.
Teacher?
Yeah. I was like, what? And apparently most of George's family moved up here to New York, New Jersey at some point.
Wow. Because where did it take place?
In South Carolina.
Okay.
So I was like, wow, this is very insane. So I was like, oh, can you connect us? And he did. And then I spoke to her. She went to FaceTime. I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. So I FaceTimed her, and then she had told me, when we were speaking, she was like, oh, I just want George's story to be just as big as Emmett Till's. And for me, that's so important. So I think after, the book, has its run, I really, really want to adapt it to like a screenplay and do something with it. So
oh my God.
We're going to see a documentary or a screenplay. We're going to see, but I'm not done with George's story yet. So
as you shouldn't be. No, that is beautiful and amazing. I think having the visuals is so powerful.
Yeah, so powerful. And because a lot of people don't read, like, if we're being honest, like, and it's fine, but I was like, but I definitely want as many people to learn about his story as they can.
Listen up.